So we are going to go into Q&A now. Very good time. So there are a few questions from the sidebar. Starting with, I think one from Joel Jacovo. It's for all four of you. Are indexes that measure how diverse and inclusive major corporations are? If there's no standard, how do we ensure companies are taking steps to have a diverse and inclusive culture?
I started answering that one actually on the chat because I'm very conversant with Zoom, having had classes with 56 or so students.
So if you can let us know.
And I basically said, I think something to the effect that basically you have to ask the corporations what they're doing. There are very few of these indexes. There's no agreed template. You have to ask them what they're doing. A lot of them are being asked to make diversity and inclusion reports as part of their corporate reporting now. And they're being questioned on progress year on year. So they'll ask them stuff like, how diverse is your board? How many women have you got on it? How many ethnic or BAME members, et cetera, et cetera? What portfolio do they hold? Then they'll ask them lower level questions, i.e. in the next tranche of people, senior management or functional management, what is the proportionality of BAME, females, et cetera, to see that, if one person leaves, let's say one Black person leaves, as we saw recently in one of the US corporations, one of the main Black US CEOs left, and all of a sudden you find there are very, very few US CEOs in the top 500 companies. So it's really important to have a pipeline. It's still in its early stages, but there will be measurement methods for these things.
And Dr. Dosu?
Well, I think, so the question there, if I look at it from a civil service perspective, I would say we have inbuilt mechanisms to ensure that this is going on, so that people from different backgrounds are being brought into the system. And we also have various departments that will come up with questionnaire from time to time. Before I came in for this program, I was dealing with one particularly about people with disability that was asking about what are we doing about those people? What specific measures do we have in place in terms of our recruitment? So I think it depends on the seriousness of senior management and the various management boards of the companies and the agencies to make this happen. I keep saying this, no matter how good your policies are, if there is no willingness to implement the spirit and the letters of the policies, it won't happen. It will just gather dust on your shelves. So I think organizations should have the determination to make it happen.
Thank you.
For us, it's compliance with the law. For me, coming from a civil service perspective, it is compliance with the law.
Okay. Dr. Tony Agbons.
Let me just tee off from where Dr. Dosu stopped just now. Dr. Degbo mentioned, it talked about measurement as well. That is key. I think legislation is going to be really important. I know that in the world, there's a lot of issues that government are grappling with, but if we are going to really make productivity high as it should be, this issue of diversity, inclusion, and equality is key. And if possible, we can even move and add equity to it so to make it properly balanced. In 2012, the United Nations released the report, the UN Global Compact report. In that report, they incorporated a few principles that seek to eliminate all this discrimination along the lines of race, color, sex, religion. But to me, it has just looked like a mere paper tick box exercise. So I think implementing all these things with legislation will be really key.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Dosu, Kede asks, I know your policy area is Ireland. What he's saying, can you give an example of how diversity is operated as a policy in Nigeria?
Well, I was a labor officer. I was a labor and industrial relations officer in my time in Nigeria. And I know for sure that a lot of things impact on even legislations in Nigeria. Who know who? You know, if you don't know anybody, diversity may not be applicable at all. Even where the law is there, it may not work. But as a former labor and industrial relations officers, I know definitely that I was in the Ministry of Employment, Labor and Productivity, and we would always negotiate with the unions from the viewpoint of this is what we have on the table. They would also be saying this is what we want. So I think it is happening there, but to be truthful, that is to be honest, how would diversity really work when some of the recruitments are done in a clandestine way? You cannot do that where I work here. You can't do it. There's no room for it. It can't happen. We read every time about different agencies recruiting in their own way. There is no transparency. Recruitments are not advertised. And all this federal character issue. We should help diversity really, but it's not helping because the recruitment policy is not diverse, it's not transparent. So that is why it is difficult for me here to say I'm giving examples about Nigeria. It doesn't really work well. But if I try that, if I don't implement the policy the way I should do it here, I probably may get sacked. But who gets sacked in Nigeria? Nobody. Nobody, because the people at the top are the ones who will bring people for you to recruit them, not following due process. So where will the due process for diversity happen? So I think it is the seriousness of the management, the seriousness of the system, the way the system operates that will ensure diversity. But where there is nepotism, how can diversity work? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just before I start on another question, Gbadebo on the chat said, manpower is not diverse. Person power is diverse. I just wanted to put that in. I'm going to call on Timmy. I will after Timmy, I would ask the question posed by Patricia Kenneth. But I'm going to call on Timmy Adesanya to ask his question. Please, Timmy.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
The question I wanted to ask is, despite it being statistically proven that increased diversity leads to increased productivity and increased revenue that Dr. Tony mentioned earlier, why is it that it's not their main focus and it's not to the standard it should be today, currently?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Timmy. Dr. Gbadebo, Dr. Dosu, please can you answer Timmy? And also, what can be done to promote more young and Black faces?
In terms of Timmy's direct question, which was about whether companies ignore diversity and inclusion, I answered it in the chat straight away, 2 minutes after he wrote it, simply saying, I don't think they ignore it. I think a lot of companies are actually populated by non-diverse people, at least certainly at the levels at which they answer those kind of questions, who often don't think about diversity and inclusion until they're challenged on it. That's my holding pattern answer. I've been in senior positions in companies And people look embarrassed when I ask the difficult questions, but I always ask them.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Dosu.
Yes, which part of it do you want me to answer? I think there are two questions.
Okay, okay. I think I think Badebo has answered one. What can, I think from an Irish perspective, what can be done to promote more young and Black faces?
Well, I have come to this program from a very practical sense of what I do on a day-to-day basis and how I myself managed to get to where I am. You must be determined. You don't just expect the system to change like that. You also must be working hard to make the system change. People, there is something they need to do too, which is they must be determined. They must not be frustrated. You must not give up. And you must not limit yourself in terms of the scope. In the system where I work, a clerical officer has the right to apply for the post of what we call in Nigeria, PAMSEC. Before it was not like that, but we opened up the system so that if you think maybe you came into the system, you've got PhD, but because you just wanted to work in the system, so you apply for clerical officer. Then once your leg is inside, begin to tell us what you can do. Tell us who you are. Tell us what you carry. Tell us what you are able to do. Let us see it. We'll invite you. Yes, we know it is difficult for a manager, for instance, who is a senior manager, to recommend a clerical officer for top position. But then, if you refuse to give the needed recommendation, you must have a good reason. So what I could say, what I'm driving at is this. It is not a one-sided solution. Our Africans or Blacks, Asians, people of ethnic minority too, should keep working harder. They shouldn't give up. They shouldn't be frustrated. They should also engage themselves in some kind of mentoring. You must look out for people who are there and ask them for some kind of guidance in the way you fill your application forms, in the way you address the panel at interviews, in the way you prepare for interviews. And finally, the kind of confidence you need to come to an interview, it must be strong, because the system sometimes may want to frustrate you, not because they want to do so, not because the individuals want to do so, but it is a default system. You see, it is inbuilt. People who have been in the service for several years, they are seeing a new island. They need time to adjust to it. It is a case of change management. Their mindset too has to change. And your own mindset too has to change. Yes. And as Obama said, yes, we can. You must believe in yourself. You must believe in the qualifications you parade. Don't just carry them as certificates and leave them at home. See what they can give, the reward they can bring to you. Work on it and be serious about it. Be dead serious to get to the top. Don't be satisfied with just middle management or low management or lower level or so. The top is your limit. Nobody can stop you if you don't stop yourself.
Okay,
there's something John Dosu just said, which I absolutely agree with. I say to my students every single day, the only person that stops you achieving what you want to achieve in life is yourself.
Yes, I agree with you, sir.
100%.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so I want to add something very briefly,
please,
because
Dr.
Dosu just said it and the thing just touched my heart. Resetting the mind. The renowned South African activist Steve Biko, he said something. That thing is always in my head. He said the most potent weapon in the hand of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed.
True.
So people should know, develop yourself, improve yourself, go for training, study more, get more skills. If it's IT, go for it. And then, like Dr. Dosu said, push. There is no free lunch anywhere.
No,
Nothing is free.
no,
And if we're expecting something to fall on our lap, it's never going to happen.
no.
There is no
Okay.
free freedom anywhere.
All right. I'm going to pose another question to you. There's no free lunch. What will somebody who has been trying and not getting through, what will be your advice to them?
You have to keep on trying. You have to keep on training yourself.
Okay.
You have to, it's like a step that you're trying to mount and you fall. You pick yourself up, you mount it
Thank
again.
you, sir.
And to add,
It's very easy. It's very easy when you're successful about it to say, oh, this high. No. All your failures that went before, nobody saw them.
Mhm.
It's because you got up from those failures that you're successful. I tell my students a story. I said, I love to party when I was a young student, but I will leave the disco at 1 o'clock because if you haven't pulled by 1, you're not going to pull on that night. I will go home, I'll have a shower and I'll start reading. My friends who haven't pulled at 1 will stay in the disco till 3. They will come home tired, they won't go to lectures the next day. It's very simple. You have to put yourself into the 6-yard box or the 18-yard box to be able to score. End of story.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, so let me quickly.
You were going to say something, KD. Yeah.
Say something here. It's very interesting conversation. I mean, I shared this with Dr. Tony Agbons. I did something on diversity. And it's very interesting that the example that came to mind was the French team in 1998 that won the World Cup for the first time in their history and on home soil, and defeated actually the favorite, the best team in the world at that time, Brazil, by 3-0. So it just ties up with everything everyone was saying. Look at the French team. Look at the diversity in that team, nationality, religion. They were the most diverse team in 1998 in the world. And because they came together as a team, they won the World Cup, played together. Nobody looked at religion, race, or anything. But most importantly, the French, if you look at the Black players, the area they came from, the French government had actually worked on some of those neighborhoods. So you're going to be seeing a neighborhood somewhere in France, and it looks beautiful, but they have parks where you could play tennis, you could do all sorts of things. So some of those Black players came from those neighborhoods. So they were not overawed, they were like, the system worked for them. Unfortunately, I think 4 years later, France kind of forgot the diversity issue. Marine Le Pen was now going on and coming to the second round. I think the most important thing there is that when France won, over 1 million people went to Champs-Élysées to celebrate. Nobody knew who was Black or white. They were all French citizens. I think that if that's one model that Africans must look at, then it's very important. And then quickly, again, it is not a tick box exercise, especially in the UK here. People just tend to say diversity, yes, you tick the exercise. You must weave it into your program, whether it's business, government, or anything you're doing. It has to be part and parcel of it. And I totally agree that nothing falls on your lap. You have to keep pushing. And seriously, what we're doing here is part of our own exercise of, at least having a diverse group to speak, to get input, and then hopefully others will emulate what we are doing. And it's a lot of knowledge being shared here. So I just needed to quickly put that in. And I know we are pushing for time.
Thank you, KD. I'm just going to ask one question from the chat box from Patricia. She said, great presentation. I would like to know if there are any policies or steps in the Nigerian workforce to build inclusive boards. I will open it up to every Dr. Gbadebo, Dr. Dosu, Dr. Tony, and Yemisi, because I know you haven't really spoken, Yemisi. Starting with Dr. Gbadebo.
I started answering this one on the chat. I know that in the private sector in Nigeria, because I worked at COO level in the private sector in Nigeria in my 2 stints, I know that in the private sector, certainly there are moves towards having more inclusive and more diverse boards, certainly having women on boards and not just in the HR position. And you know, we have a lot of highly capable Nigerian women anyway, so you can't hold them back. But unfortunately, the public sector, I'm sorry to say, lags somewhat behind. It doesn't have a pipeline of the same caliber of women as you see in the private sector. That's my understanding of it.
Okay. Dr. Tony.
Yeah, I think Dr. Debo has actually said what I was thinking. I worked in the private sector in Nigeria before moving to the UK. I was working in Lagos. Yeah, I remember our board, the company I was working in, pharmaceuticals. Yeah, we had that kind of. I was put in so many, working team because I was from. They used to call me Omobende because I was from the old Bende state in Nigeria. So yeah, it's always there. But the only problem, the challenge we have there at the moment is like the culture of you must know somebody at the top. I think if that one is dealt with, we'll make more progress.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Dosu, did you have something to say? Because I've got another question from Folashade Oduja. Folashade, do you want to ask the question so that Dr. Dosu and the rest can answer? Or do you want me to read it out?
It's on the chat.
Okay, so let me read it. So,
am I okay?
Yeah,
yes. Sorry.
Yeah, go on.
Okay,
go on.
Sorry.
Go on.
Yes, because one of the things, it's okay, we talk about diversity, but when we change our names, when we try to change, in other words, change our identity because we want to conform. So I just wondered, to what extent are we promoting diversity? And for example, I know somebody whose name is Shani, and because they couldn't pronounce it, they called him Steve. And what's the relationship between Steve and Shani? And I'm just thinking, in terms of the paradigm shift, in terms of us saying we accept us for who you are, including learning to pronounce our names. And I'm just wondering what the panel think in terms of, Olu. Well, my name is Olu, but then I say it's Olu, Ola, and all those sorts of things. For me, I just think, we're just trying to change our identity to conform, and that doesn't promote diversity.
Well, my colleagues learned to pronounce my challenging name. They've not even tried my Esa name. Because I'm half Ijebu and I'm half Aisha. So when it comes to a matter of name, I have nowhere to run. So my name is Badibo Ogunami, and that's it. And it's served me well in Nigeria here and everywhere else I've worked. I've never thought of changing it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is, what do the panel think about it? Because for me, it's a fundamental thing, but it's not something we talk about. But for me, it's, it doesn't help to force that paradigm change in terms of, we're diverse and our names. And don't forget, a lot of our names have meaning. So when people say, my name is Tito, I said, Tito doesn't mean anything, but Tito means something. That's not a conversation I hear in all of this mix, and I just wondered what the panel.
It's the conversation I have, because you have to have uncomfortable conversations. I remember when I got promoted to deputy head of department, which was actually very recent, on the 4th of January, a lot of people came to me and said, "Oh, we're really pleased that somebody like you that speaks truth to power has got the job." Wow. So sometimes if you adjust yourself, eventually they recognize the fact that you're actually trying to make a difference, and you will get the job. It's as simple as that.
Yeah,
So
I think I want to add something, Sosa, to what Shade is saying. A lot of people have this very inferiority complex, low self-esteem. People should just be themselves. And like we were saying earlier, if you are trying, you cannot get it, check somewhere else or change your plan, have a plan B. For instance, let me use myself, and I tell my students this, I always like to use myself as an example. I've worked in security in this country when I moved here, but it didn't stop me, and I was studying. He said it didn't stop me from being what I am today. I just forgot about the degrees because I just came. Degrees stay in the bag. Let me do what I have to do. And I always love teaching. I want to impart knowledge. I started as a support staff. I was doing 1 day a week while I was still doing my other job. 1 day a week. And later, I went to the director of studies one day. I said, "Sir, please, if you have a vacancy here, I would really love to teach. He said, really? I said, yeah. 6 months later, and the man told me that, look, apply. There's a vacancy for a lecturer that for marketing. And that was it. And this is where I am today.
Thank you. So what everyone has said is that be your authentic self, be hardworking, believe in yourself and your ability. And also don't just think because, oh, I have a degree, so everything should fall on my lap. You still have to do some more work. Be yourself, sell yourself, and you will succeed. It might not be immediately, but you would definitely succeed.
Can I just sorry, no, I don't mean to interrupt you. You can finish. Yeah.
I have go on. Yeah, go on, Dr.
Okay.
Joseph.
Okay. Now about the name change and all those, I listened to all those comments, but let me speak as somebody in senior management and in the civil service. Senior management has no involvement in how people call your name or how you answer your name. It is a matter of choice for you. And I've noticed that it is actually not the indigenes or the Caucasians that actually come up with those formulations. It is our own people that will tell them when they ask them, what's your name? Instead of saying Ola, he or she will say Ola. So everybody calls him or her Ola. You understand? And so management stay aloof. We don't get involved in all those tribal issues. They are so little for us to consider. We leave you to deal with yourselves as colleagues. If you introduce yourself as Ola instead of Ola, it's Oluwatobi, that's your name, but you say something else. Of course, people will call you what you call yourself. People will call you. I've seen many Asian colleagues that will say, my name is Ramesh. And you keep calling them Ramesh. You don't change it to Ramish or something. They will tell you that's not their name. So I rather will say it's just a very informal arrangement between people or among people. For us, we were amazed, and we are really we're amused by those things. We see them happening, but we don't get involved. If you want to call yourself Ola.
Dr. Dosu, you know I'm very troublesome. When somebody mispronounces my name, I conveniently mispronounce theirs.
You see?
Till they get it right. It's very simple. If your name is John, I'll call you Joan. You will get Badebo right.
You see, Dr. Dosu, in some cases, what you're saying is true, but in many cases, it is people who have just chosen to call them what they think is convenient.
But if that happens, you follow Dr. Gbadebo's formula. Yeah. You follow Dr. Gbadebo's formula.
They don't like it.
You tell them, first you tell them nicely, my name is not Ola, it is Ola. Yes, but if they refuse and they persist in calling you what you don't bear, well, you mentor them. If they refuse mentoring, then you teach them. You know the difference between the two. You go show them now.
That's very good. So you have to have self-belief, and it starts from home. You have to know that everybody should call you what you want them to call you, not because they have any power over you, because the law is very clear that people should treat you with respect. If you allow your name to be represented, they will continue. It's for you now to let people know this is the meaning, or this is how I want you to call my name. And if they cannot do it, it's an offensive behavior. And that is not acceptable in the workplace or outside, because that is what the legislation and the law and the policy is all about. So don't be ashamed of your name. Your name is prideful. Your parents gave you a beautiful name. So you make sure that people know that. We have a chancellor in this country. His name is Rishi Sunak.
No.
Nobody will misrepresent his name or misquote his name. You will call it the way he wants it called. And it doesn't have anything to do with position or ranking.
Yes.
What you want people to do, they will do for you.
But you must also handle that with care.
Yeah, with tact.
Because as somebody in management, we are watching others. We are watching those who are our reportees, just the same way they are watching us. If you continue fighting over name calling, we will probably see you as not a good team worker. So you must find a way of resolving that in a very diplomatic way, because we want to know who the team workers are so that we can know what kind of assignment we'll give them. If we think you cannot work with others because of name calling, then that's how we'll evaluate you. So you must handle it with care.
Yes.
Yeah.
So be tactful. Let it not be, oh, they are very aggressive.
You see, sorry, this is
There's a distinction between being assertive and aggressive.
Exactly.
I'm always assertive.
Precisely my point. Because that's one of the things that I think is an issue here. Because we cannot be on the one hand be saying I'm diverse, but then, oh yes, you can call me whatever you like, and then I now become the person who is the problem, not the person. I think, you see, this whole mentality paradigm shift, if we want it to be what it is, you know, because it's a form of colonization. If you say, oh, you can't pronounce my name, okay, just call me an Anglophile. As far as I'm concerned, it's a form of colonization and conforming. That is what I think. And I think there's a fine line. There's a very fine line. And we need, and it's the same thing about equality, which was another question I was going to raise. Because the whole thing sometimes about equality, most times it's not about some of those people wanting to exercise their rights. It's about having it the absolute, you know. So it's now not respecting you, but it is about only about me. And that happens a lot of times with a lot of these things. And we just need to be very careful, especially when we're people at the top who are making these decisions.
Can I tell you something, ma? What you are raising is an issue of harassment. Those of us in HR, we see it. If you don't want to be called that name and somebody insists on calling you that way, it becomes a case of harassment or bullying. You have a right to deal with that informally, or you have a right to deal with it informally. If you want to push it through the due process, your case will be, I'm being harassed or I'm being bullied for this reason or for that reason. So what you are saying begins to fall into the domain of harassment or bullying.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dosu. So the diversity, inclusion, equality has many facets. This is just the beginning. So this is the beginning of many conversations that we are having. And this is why there is a law. This is why the policy is there. And this is why there are many professions. And it's an emerging area. There are a lot of issues because it's dealing with people. We don't have any time here. I'm very conscious now. What I'm going to do is to call on the speakers.
Before you wrap, let me just make two observations.
Okay, go on.
The first observation is around mentoring, because it was mentioned earlier, and I think we did not really pick it up. So I heard from the voice of Timi a need or a request for how things could be done by the younger ones. I think most of us on the call here are slightly older than Timi. So the purpose should be, how do we pass on this knowledge that we're sharing in this close unit to those coming up and about to get into that space, let's say it this way. So The second observation I want to make is around what Tito mentioned. I think she said her name was Tito. I have a feeling I know that name also, actually. But the point here is the topics that she raised. We must not lose sight of how society is structured. Society is structured in a way where we are not indigenous to the society. We want some changes into society. We want society to accommodate and adopt different cultures. It means society needs to continue to evolve. I totally understand the issues of the law perspective or the HR perspective. I totally understand the viewing of an employee as not being a team player and stuff like that. But these are also aspects that when we are not part of the society as such, we need to learn how to walk through those type of maze so that we don't get caught up in those skirmishes. So those are the three key observations I want to make. We need to pick up someone to mentor so that they can understand that there's some backup for them. They can gain some experience. And I will leave it like that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Niyi. So mentorship, the need for mentorship, and also engaging and navigating our way. The law can be there. The actual practice is another thing. So for us, for the younger generation, they will, not only the younger generation, even the older generation or the workforce, there needs to be mentorship. And there has to be an active way of looking for mentors or actually seeking counsel on how to deal with issues like this. And another thing is, we live in a society that might be different from our original space. We need to navigate that tactically, diplomatically, and with the mindset that we will overcome it by learning and by being able to champion it, to challenge it, to doing it the right way and getting the best result. So I'm going to now call on each of the speakers, and then KD will round up to give your closing remark. Please, 1 minute each. Starting with Yemisi, are you there, please? And Dr. Gbadebo, I would ask you to do that just before Yemisi comes on.
Okay. I think we've investigated the shape, size, depth, height, and width of diversity. It's a many-faceted thing, no doubt. And there are different takes on it. There's the sort of more cautious civil servant take. There's the slightly more polemic Yoruba Ijebu Ishaman take, where you have to deal with things that you face on a daily basis. Ultimately, though, the truth of it is this: if you have ability in an organization, irrespective of what you look like and what your name is, after a while, people will learn your name. So ultimately, you need to just focus on doing your work and doing it really well, and the recognition and the respect will come.
Thank you. Dr. Dosu.
Yes, thank you very much. I personally think that mentoring doesn't have to go through the formal structure sometimes. Yes, the young ones too should be able to identify those at the top in the system they want to find their way into and look for people who can mentor them. So that can be an informal process. Yes, I know that I've mentored several people. And I want to say something to those that are listening and those that have been mentoring. Don't feel frustrated, because sometimes as Africans, when we do things that are good to people, we expect them to come back and say thank you. Please, if you don't get the thank you, don't stop helping. Keep mentoring. Keep being there, so that at the end of the day, your child may be a beneficiary of your labor of love. So be encouraged. Don't be discouraged because the young man or the young woman did not come back to say, thank you, sir, as we say back home. Yes. So I think diversity is a new ballgame. It's a case of human rights. It is no more a case of somebody favoring you. The law has enshrined it. The system is propagating it. The individuals at the top are also implementing it. So you also demand for your right. When you go for interviews and you are not satisfied, ask HR what happened, what went wrong. Ask them for a report, except they don't have anything in writing. But HR will gladly oblige you, give you, feedback from your interview process. Yes, don't feel shy. Don't feel they are going to victimize you next time. That is what they are there to do. That is what the law requires of them. Thank you.
Yemi is back.
Yeah, okay. Hi, Yemi. Thank you, Dr. Dosu, for that.
I've been here all along.
Okay, we'll be telling you.
I'm just listening.
Yeah, go ahead. Your closing remarks, please.
Well, once again, I just want to say thank you very much for everyone who's attended. Diversity is extremely, extremely important. We can't stress it enough. I look forward to the day where we don't have to be talking about diversity and inclusion. That is a given. And that's where we're headed to. So thank you very much to all the wonderful speakers. My father's in the house. I say thank you very much. Sister Sosa, I am so grateful. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Badibo. Oh, you've spoken, Dr. Tony.
Thank you, Esosa. I'm also grateful for the opportunity. Thank you, Nigeria Magazine, for the good work you are doing. I think for me, it's all about we keeping this conversation going. It's a kind of advocacy. We just keep talking about it. And for some of us who have gone through the mill, let us also tell our story. People don't talk, they don't say their story. Tell your story to others. It will inspire, it will motivate. So again, it's been a very nice session. I've learned a lot tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. KD, I would like to call on you for your closing remarks.
Okay, yes, thank you, everyone. It's been a very remarkable almost 2 hours of conversation, interactive session, and all. I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's a very interesting area, diversity, inclusion, and equality, or equity, again, as Dr. Tony Agbons has added. For me, it's been productive 2 hours, like I said, and I think this is just the beginning of the conversation. Our next event actually is on the 8th of March, which is to mark International Women's Day. I look forward to that event, even though it's a International Women's Day, but there's something that in terms of research, talking about diversity, that corporations that women head have tended to do better than the men folks. And so we're going to be having a lot of speakers, female speakers. I think it's an all-female session anyway, representing diverse groups. As Dr. Gbadebo said, I actually learned that today, that Africa has, in terms of DNA or genomics, more diverse people than the whole world put together. So that's very interesting statistics. The beauty about things like this is that you don't go and start questioning and asking when a PhD professional, by the way, Dr. Gbadebo is a lawyer actually, and so he has a PhD in law. So when he tells you something like that, you take it as a correct source. And so I've really, if there's anything I'm taking away from that, from this discussion, amongst others, will be what he said. And Without repeating myself or what the speakers have said, I think Dr. Dosu, thank you very much also for bringing your perspective from senior management. And I think I would say I wish you all the best, because you're not going to be in EU all by yourself. We are no longer joining you, unfortunately, with Brexit, but we are still going to tap into your expertise, because what most people don't know is that Dr. Dosu actually also represents Ireland sometimes in the EU matters. So that's been a benefit to us. And what can I say about Dr. Agbons? Actually was very erudite as usual. And then I could not forget Yemisi Akindele, a brilliant lady. She hasn't really spoken much about herself, but
You're welcome, sir.
I haven't spoken lead without doubts and everything from the challenge. There's the theory that the connectivity may break down, and with all the distractions, she was able to put a strong case for diversity. I also learned from you. So it's been
Thank
a
you,
brilliant day. And I also want to thank a couple of people who have been our supporters who came on board. I can see Leo Marere there. He's not speaking, but he's taking it on board. I'm sure we'll have our discussions later. So continue to support us as Nigeria Magazine. I think we've taken it a step much more higher than what we thought. This time last year, we were not even talking about having these programs. And so, but to date, we've done, I would say the last time I checked our video, we have over 50 or 55 speakers of the same quality. So we're going to continue to do what we are doing. And so, yeah, it's been a productive day. Thank you very much for everyone. And have a one again. And before I forget, one of the supporters of this event is a MEPON. I think it's important that we thank them for giving us the ability to put it together. And so thank you very much and have a wonderful week.
Thank you, Kede. Thank you to our brilliant speakers, and thank you to our equally brilliant participants. It's been a very good and very productive session. As Kede said, we will be back, and it will be on women on Monday, the 8th of March. We're going to be we are going to be celebrating with a few women. Some of them are here. The International Women's Day event, and it will be looking at leadership in the era of COVID-19. As you know, our events are done on a monthly basis now, and they are topical. Please engage with us. Come back with whatever you want us to raise. We want to inform, we want to be very informative, and we want our stakeholders, you are stakeholders, to gain from it. Diversity, inclusion, and equality is for everyone. So let us champion it and make diversity, inclusion, and equality, and also equity work. So thank you very much. It's the beginning of the week. Have a great week ahead, and see you soon. Bye, everyone.